Axons Unleashed.
Hey, morning everyone. My name's Robbie. I've got Tamara here with me, Dan, and we've got a very special guest joining us here for the latest edition of Axons Unleashed. Hello, how is everyone?
Good morning.
Hey everybody, and it's good that today we're actually trialling a new little concept where we've got the whole podcast studios come to us in our office at Axon headquarters.
have.
So I feel really, really special that the team has done that for us as well.
Yeah, so if you guys have been following us on YouTube, actually watching this as opposed to just listening to it while you're driving your car, ironing your clothes. It's funny.
Driving your car, no, we don't encourage that.
Video, if you're
As
not allowed
opposed to
watch
listening
videos
it when
while
you're driving your car. You can certainly listen to a podcast while you're driving your car. I listen to podcasts whilst I iron my clothes. I'm a fucking weirdo, aren't I, Tamara?
Yes.
Like, hey babe, I'm just going to go and do some ironing. I said it to the other day. You went, what?
Yeah,
So,
I was about to ask, like, what era are you living in that you iron your clothes? Do you still iron your jeans, by the way?
If they don't come out of the dryer properly, they got to be done properly. Like
I'm not allowed to iron. I don't do a good enough job, so that's fine by me.
That's the old Sergeant Turner coming out there,
Yep.
isn't it? It's like,
Yep.
make sure the creases are in the right spot.
Not
Yes.
too bad.
Yeah.
Hey, so
Well,
we've
it
got
used to be worse.
awesome special guest that is just joining us this morning. So last episode we had the amazing Deb, the mortgage broker, come and join us. So as we've sort of expanded Axon's sort of key advisors and key stakeholders to come and join us on the podcast, this morning we're going to take it another step. Higher, lower, deeper, faster, better, whichever way you want to put it, but we're going to talk about all things legal, soliciting, conveyancing, and we've got the wonderful Shea from Ramsden Law that's joined us.
Woohoo.
Morning, how are you?
Morning.
Good, thank you.
Good. You're a little bit nervous, aren't you, buddy?
Very.
It's all right.
Podcast before.
But
so
you've
this is my
listened to
first
all the other ones, and you can see they're
Yep.
super easygoing, nice and conversationalist. We pretty much fucking do whatever we want. And guess what? You're here now. So yeah, it's
We did encourage her and say we'd put vodka in her water, but we haven't.
Yeah, for the record.
Then you decided 9 o'clock in the morning is not the right time to be drinking vodka.
And I still have to go back to work.
Exactly right.
Not on a Tuesday, 9 a.m. Other days of the week may not be all right.
Absolutely.
Hey, so let's sort of keep the script a little bit because there's so many things we want to unpack. So I guess from my perspective, how did Ramsden Law come into sort of Axon's wheelhouse? We've got this thing, ladies and gents, called the elite property experience. That is, you get to work with the very best, partners and associates and like teams, and to make sure, I guess, as Dan, you and I say, when someone gets to the success package section of our coaching, if you're not having the elite property investing experience, if you're not getting absolute VVIP experience from everyone that you speak to, solicitor, mortgage broker, accountant, builders, property manager, everybody, you fucking ring me and I'll put my size 12 in their ass and I'll sort it out for you. That's a little promise I give them.
Well, it does
Pretty
come
much
down
word
to
for word.
our reputation is on the line and it's coming down to something that's out of our control to some extent because these are external suppliers and external people that we're aligned with. And if they're not putting our clients first, if they're not giving them that great experience, that comes back to us.
So we were being, reasonably well serviced by another conveyancing firm. No names, no pack drills. But I sort of got to a point, and this is the very ruthless nature as far as this goes, right? We've got to uphold. I come from an elite background. I know what the term elite means after spending 11 years as a special forces officer. We got notified by by the other solicitor firm. We're like, the client rang us. Hey, we settled on our land 11 days ago. We're just wondering when's the next meeting so we can actually be introduced to the build support team to go ahead and build the house. And I was like, fucking 11 days ago? What do you mean it's settled? Ring. Hi, hey, it's Axon here. Jono has just settled on his land 11 days ago. Oh, Jono always gets a rap, doesn't he? Yeah.
Poor Jono.
Jono just settled on his land 11 days ago. How come we haven't been notified yet? Let me just check our files. And we went back and checked. Yeah, sorry, we forgot to send you the notification. There's fucking steam coming out of my ears because this is the lovely clients down in Sydney that you and I have been working with for many years who went through so much emotional, personal, family bloody turmoil to even get to that position in the first place. And I was embarrassed. I was shocked. I was disappointed. I was like, we're fucking sacking these mob right here, right now.
And that just goes to show the really high expectations that you have. 11 days is 11 days and really, is that going to put a huge dampener on someone's experience? Probably not. But is it the best thing for our clients? Are they experiencing the very best situation, the very best experience? That's what you're more concerned about. Like, if you let that slip, then what else is slipping?
Yeah, totally.
And they'd been around since like Axon's sort of inception. They were part of the team that sort of formed together at the initial stages. But, I mean, that must have been relatively... Well, as you said, there was steam coming out of your ears. You're also a relatively loyal kind of guy as well. So that would have been a bit of a challenge for you to be like, okay, do I uphold my like brand promise of this elite property experience, or do I remain loyal to those people who have already been like a huge supporter for us? Tell me about how that went through your mind.
Oh, mate, it was... so you're right. I'm like how you put, a relatively loyal guy. You and I have been around for a while.
Don't look at me like that.
You're absolutely right. Oh, look, it's one of those things that it wasn't the very first thing that firm had done, which hasn't sort of, made me go home and pop a bloody bottle of champagne. As the sort of saying goes, give someone a second chance, but don't give them a third. And I guess so it was just at my point, I'm like, all right, this is 3 strikes and you're out. So, loyalty goes out the window reasonably quickly once you're at that sort of point whereby, all right, this firm and this person and this event and these people in your life are just not contributing to the highest level anymore. And sorry, but
I think it also comes down to accountability as well. So when people make mistakes, and we say this even in our business, if you make a mistake, just freaking like come forward
Just
with it.
own it.
Just own it, yeah. Like rather than us find out about it and come after like them, then yeah.
We better move on because I'm just looking over at Shea and she's like, fucking how many mistakes have I made so far?
No, I remember when you told me about that, and I was like, oh no, better not forget to copy Robbie in. Better not forget to copy.
But I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, we'll talk about, I suppose, RT, how it actually came to be that we have this now relationship that's with Ramsden. But like, from that perspective, like we weren't very, like we were completely transparent when we came to Ramsden. We said, this is what we've received. This is what we loved. This is what we didn't love.
This is our expectation and our process.
Absolutely. Like we didn't hide behind any of that stuff. And when we're coming forward with like our absolute transparent expectations of what's going to go forward, like sometimes that can be pretty confronting to people who are already bedded in their own processes. And we're like, no, this is our process that our clients expect to follow. Yeah,
and we'll certainly, we'll come to you, Shea, shortly. I'm really keen on you sharing with our listeners and watchers about what your first impressions were of us. Probably be reinforced right now. This is we sort of pride ourselves. We're a bunch of veterans. We've got a very no bullshit approach. We're extremely passionate about the way we help our clients, and we do it in a very different way to everyone else in the whole industry, bar none. Fact, not opinion. So okay. I guess it's just one of those things. So luckily, the amazing Justin, who runs an awesome insurance firm, his brother is in the Special Forces community. And we just sort of went and had a bit of a general catch up with him about, some professional indemnity insurances and ongoing protection of Axon as it grows. And he's like, hey, mate, how's things going? I'm like, I fucking sacked the solicitor firm because, this and this happened. He goes, one of my best mates, John Ramsden, he owns, a big, large multi-award winning, solicitor firm here. They do family law, they do criminal law, they do, tax law, they certainly do property law as well. What are you going to have a chat with them? I'm like, I've definitely seen the ads on TV. I've driven past the corporate centre at Bundle. I've seen their sign. I'm like...
And I think we've also, like some of our other network in the property industry here in Gold Coast, which we are quite a part of. There was a few bits and pieces. We'd heard the name before.
Yes, certainly. So... I was like, mate, I'd be grateful of the opportunity if we can sort of link up. So yeah, I know Justin sort of sent a text message, and for those that don't know, all business meetings occur at this place in the Gold Coast called Edgewater. It's in Isle of Capri, so we went and had lunch at Edgewater.
It's where
amazing lychee martini.
You don't want to be there after 12 o'clock on a Friday afternoon because there's less business getting done and more socialising.
Well, that's
linear cocktail.
That is the business.
One and the same.
So we went and had a bit of a chat there, and John's a managing partner of a bloody solicitor firm, and I'm rocked up there in my board shorts and my polo shirt on, which is what we wear every day. That's all right. He relates to his clients, and we relate to ours. But yeah, look, we got on well, and I said, look, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. He knew the other person that I had that little blip in the radar with before, and whilst he was disappointed to hear that, he goes, that's just one of those things, I suppose. So I guess the next step there was, Dan, we had an organiser, the key people from Axon went and met the key people from Ramsden Law, and I suppose, Shea, that's when we first came to your sort of big boardroom there. Lots of beautiful pastries and a lovely morning tea was put on for us, an amazing view, in the Bundle Corporate Centre there, looking back towards the Gold Coast. And we sort of had about 15 or 20 slides in just typical military fashion. Here's our org chart. Here's our business model. Here's who in the zoo. This is how it all sort of works.
We gave them a presentation.
Well, of course.
And I remember there's a lot of charts and arrows. What's the step 1, step 2, step 3?
This is the process. Follow the bouncing ball. This is how we do it.
What was your initial thoughts when you saw that presentation and you saw all those slides, all of that, process?
I thought there's a lot of process and procedures that needs to follow. And before meeting Axon, I was just doing the back end part of things. For example, when the contract's already unconditional, I'll be the one organising settlements, yelling at the banks, why are you not ready? But this is when I'm like, okay, there's so many process, and someone mentioned, oh, this sounds painful. And I'm like, you know what? I'll do it. So I can run from beginning to the end.
So you were kind of in the background, I guess, back then. You weren't really a main driver of things back then, but that was your sort of chance to step up and say, I'm going to take on the Axon clients.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
About 2 years more.
Nice.
14th of Feb 2019. So what are we now?
Valentine's Day. That was so romantic.
I knew that date rang a bell for some reason.
The love story began.
And I was going to say, I believe our wives were really, really impressed. We're like, oh, it's Valentine's Day. You know what we're going to do? Let's go and eat pastries and have a lovely morning tea with some solicitors. And
it's just hilarious that you're like, oh, back in the 14th of February, that's when we met our solicitors. Nothing to do with Valentine's Day.
From my sort of perspective, I was impressed that there wasn't just a couple of conveyancing clerks that were taking care of the paperwork. There was a whole property division. So I guess, maybe Shea, can you just sort of give us a quick little sort of down and dirty about how does the whole property division run at Ramsden?
So we had, at our meeting, David Namatala, who is our property partner, he was there. Belinda, she is a special counsel. And we also had Cheryl Middleton, who is the conveyancer, and myself, from memory.
Yep.
And I remember there was also only 4 of you.
Yep.
Yeah. You, Robbie, Tamara, Dan,
and Dave it would have been. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So Axon was quite small back then as well.
Yeah. And I think only 4 of us attended to the meeting, and after the meeting, I said, I'll do this.
Yep.
Yeah. Was there something that you saw or heard, or you just a bit of a gut feel like, you know what, I'll give these bloody buffhead veterans a go? As we always refer to ourselves.
Hey,
I know.
You get lovingly put in as a buffhead veteran nowadays.
Yes, you got no choice.
Well, because I heard someone mention that, oh, this sounds painful, not really keen to do it. I'm like, well, I'll do it then. Who else going to do it if you not keen to do it?
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started with all the Axon files, Dave would be the one giving me a call every few days. Shay, you didn't do this. Yeah.
Dave is commonly known as our process monkey.
Yeah.
And I say that with a lot of love, because he knows exactly what to, like, step by step, and nothing gets missed.
The boys get pulled up if their diagrams on their property packs are off by, I think it's 0.1 millimeter or 1 millimeter or something. It's crazy.
Within point.
Anyway, if you want to talk about something painful, that's fucking painful. Doing a property pack with Dave, because he's so into it all.
And
right?
when
we love you, Dave.
And when we whenever I see Dave's calling, I'm like, oh, what did I do now? And now Dave don't even have to call me anymore.
Yeah,
you got this.
And anything at all, I'll be like, someone's not skipping a step here.
Yeah.
You give it back to us. Go, you guys haven't followed your own procedure here.
But you know what, I think, to be fair, I think we would have even mentioned it during that first session. We acknowledged from a military team dynamics perspective, you've got your form, groups of people coming together. You've got your storm phase where people are like working out and grinding the gears and, doing these sort of ebbs and flows. Form, storm, everything starts and then just normalise a little bit. It's called the norm, and then you get to the point where you perform. Form, storm, norm, perform. So definitely those people that have got at least junior NCO training and above, from a military perspective, will know exactly what I'm talking about. And we went through the whole thing. And again, once we've got the right people working in the team together, As I say, teamwork's not just a group of people that work together. Teamwork's a group of people that trust each other, and we were quickly able to form that bond and that trust. From my perspective, anyway, you were doing what you needed to do. We were finding your clients and then educating and coaching them along the way, and then we just sort of did that form, storm, non-perform, back end stuff. So we really got to that point where we started to hit our straps, really, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Let's, I suppose, deep dive, because you're here as a special guest, Shea. Like, can you actually tell us, for those listeners out there that haven't gone through the process, like, what is a conveyancing solicitor, and like, why is it actually important to have a conveyancing solicitor on your side when you're going through either the acquisition or disposal of a property?
Well, conveyancing solicitor is a person that you're trusting to guide you through your obligations under the contract, and also at the same time to make sure that the seller is doing, performing their obligation as well. And if everything goes well, the end result will be the title is going to get transferred into your name, which is the settlement day. And it's really important because I'm quoting Sham, my amazing supervisor.
We love
Sham. Yeah, he's a great bloke. Great bloke.
Or Dan would say Siam.
Yeah, he does still call it, because his name is spelled S-Y-A-M. Siam. I'm like, no, dickhead, it's Sham.
Yes.
He's like, it's not how it's fucking spelled. I said,
Jane was arguing with me at the pub, and then he showed up, and I'm like, you can ask him yourself.
So quoting Sham, he always tell the client over the phone, look, you're not buying a second-hand car here. You are buying a valuable asset. And for most people, it costs a lot of money, probably their most expensive purchase they will ever make. Yeah. And if anything goes wrong or any stuff up at all, not only there is a chance that you might lose the property, you might lose your deposit, and also...
There's definitely a lot more at stake than buying a car or even like, pair of shoes.
Handbag, whatever.
And
all the expensive things.
And not just that as well, like if it goes down to that track as well, potentially could be left a gap for the seller to sue you to complete.
So some damages coming that way as well. So
the risks are higher.
Yeah, it's bloody... It's one of those things that people do. They go out there and they'll go either one of two ways. They'll be like, I can get like the conveyancing pack from this post office and go and try and do this myself. Ooh. Or they go ahead and they try and find the cheapest conveyancing solicitor out there.
I didn't even know that was a thing. Is that really a thing?
We always tell the client, when we get phone inquiries, the first thing they ask is about prices. And when they hear about our prices, they're like, oh, but the other party is a lot cheaper. And we usually tell them, hey, what you pay is what you get. Our service is like, say, Qantas, and there's probably you're paying for like Tiger Airways or Jetstar.
And Tiger Airways, and then when you turn up to the gate and you're like, oh, you would like to put a bag on?
More fees.
Putting a bag into...
Do you want a seatbelt?
Yeah,
oh. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, do you want me to send this next email? And it's like, yes, I want you to send me the email. And it's like, no worries, here's the invoice for $50. And here, you need to change the settlement date. That's going to be another $400, guys. And all of a sudden, those numbers really start adding up. And like, I'm not saying you can't use that business model. It's about going in with your eyes wide open that there are multiple business models that solicitors use, obviously.
And also, like, as we were saying, this is a huge risk-adverse sort of situation. Risky situation that if you don't get it right, then the consequences are huge.
The stakes are higher.
The stakes are higher. So why would you risk, like, I don't know. I guess when we talked to Deb about having an investment specialist mortgage broker, someone that's really targeted for, this kind of situation, would you say that there's different conveyances as well and different experience levels, different, if there's different situations happening in the purchase of a property, then some people having more experience or using relationships and that kind of thing is more beneficial?
Yeah, most definitely. For example, just as a basic, even have a good broker to begin with. It's, it changed the whole different circumstances, because you might have a broker that might say, hey, you got finance approved, but they don't let you know that there's actually a refinance on the background. So while we actually confirm finance on the purchase, we're ready to settle, say, in 2 weeks' time. And when we follow up, hey, what's
the money?
happening. They're like, oh, we still haven't managed to book in for the refinance yet. So if we were to know all this beforehand, before we confirm, we can actually estimate, how long of an extension do we need for settlement, and ask for it up front, saying that, we're going to ask for settlement date to be this date on the and then our client will be happy to, confirm finance on that basis if you agree.
Yeah, it's really, really important that so sure, it's your job from a contractual perspective to make sure that all the personal particulars of the seller and the buyer have the obligations as you spoke about before. But generally when we're talking about buying a property, it's about protecting the client and then sinking the finance. Because unless someone's buying a property with cash, which is very, very rare these days, certainly has happened before and no doubt will happen again, but very, very rare, they're going to need financing in some way, shape or form. And for you to be able to be aware of the financing and the timelines around that, and then the synchronicity of making sure that it all works, because as soon as you go unconditional, we'll certainly explain, I'll get you to explain exactly what that means shortly, and then you can't settle within a stipulated timeline in the contract, then you start paying bloody late penalty fees.
Yep.
So there are, second, third, fourth order effects from a consequential perspective that you need to have everything wired tight before you step over that line and go unconditional. And the communication with an awesome mortgage broker is absolutely key. So of course, that as you said, Tammy, in the last episode, we had Debbie come and join us from a sort of mortgage broking and financial sort of perspective. Just give us a bit of an idea about what your relationship is with her, and like we know she's a great chick, but I'm talking about from a professional standpoint. How often do you guys communicate, and how well informed do you feel about our clients' circumstances?
I deal with Deb almost daily basis, except for weekends, of course.
And even then, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, yes. After hours as well. Hey, Deb.
Quick question.
One question. And she's amazing because even when she has finance approved, she'll give you a heads up. Okay, this client it's not going to be around, and just FYI, say this client, he's based in New South Wales and the wife is based in, say, WA, and we need to somehow coordinate for the mortgage documents to all sign together. And from there as well, it gives me a better idea where I stand before I even confirm finance. And that will also let me know, okay, this is how much their finance application amount is. This is how much LMI. And from there, I don't even need to wait for the bank to tell me what's the funds available at settlement, and speed up the process, because a lot of time other matters that I don't deal with DAP, I have to wait for the bank to tell me how much is available before I can go back to the client and go, this is how much we need for settlement.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of our business is about that, about being proactive and about doing things, what's the word I'm trying to think, doing things at the same time.
Concurrent activity. One of my favourites, babe.
That's right.
Love it.
I was thinking multitasking, but I was like, that's not a word that you would use. Concurrent activity. But our whole business, what else can we be doing to speed up the process further on down the track, and how can we make sure that this process goes so smoothly because we all are sharing all that vital information to make sure the next person is already aware of what the next step is going to be.
Yep.
Absolutely. Shea, you've been speaking very diligently, and I suppose very much we've been talking about very technical aspects as well, about talking about settlement timeframes and how you actually manage that. You didn't learn that out of school, so there's obviously been some learning going on. How did, I suppose, you go from Shea of 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was you finished school, to where you are now? Can you just sort of take us on an adventure of how you came to be Shea, the Top Gun, the Top Gun Axon supporter?
I studied at Bonn. I started business initially, major in marketing, but after graduation, it was just a bit too broad. I don't know what to do. So then my parents were like, summon me back home and just come back for holiday.
Back to Malaysia.
Come back home for a bit. And my dad put me to a law firm to do a work experience there. It was one of his friends that owned the law firm. And when he interviewed me, the first thing he asked me was, by any chance, you might consider doing law in the future? I'm like, sorry, not my cup of tea. No offense, but it's just really not my cup of tea. So I was actually working in the conveyancing division when I was there. And 9 months later, I said, yeah, I decided that I want to go back to Australia and I'm just going to pursue law. And he's like, what happened to not being your cup of tea? I'm like, well, some things can change.
You convinced me.
Yes.
And of course, there's many facets to law as well.
Yeah.
As I sort of said before, criminal law, family law, tax law,
Yeah.
property law, you
So
name
at
it.
least, so then I did completed my law degree at Bonn again. At least when I graduate, I can't then say I don't know what I'm going to do. It's like
Yeah.
one straight pathway. You just be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I did start up doing migration law, and then I thought, what if I'm sick of that area one day and I have no other area of law to fall into? So I started learning property law, and that's how I started doing conveyancing.
And you worked for a couple of different law firms, and then I believe you were on holidays and
Yes.
decided I need a change.
How many holidays do you go on?
I used to go on a lot of holidays before Axon days, and now I'm just like,
Now we keep you busy.
yes. So when I was at my old firm, I went on a holiday to Japan. And when I was in Japan, because I guess when you go to work every day, you don't realize it just, everything's on repeat. And
You're just
when
in the grind of
when
it
you
at
have,
that point.
yeah, when you have time
the
to
groove.
reflect how you feel about the old firm, I was like, oh, I'm not really happy being there. So when I was in Japan, I actually started putting resumes together and start sending when I was in Japan, because I'm like, I don't want to come back.
That's a good
to
way
that
to spend
firm.
your holidays, right?
Yeah. I was like, I don't want to go back to that firm when I go back, come back from Japan. So, from there, I had 3 interviews on the go. I had my first interview on the same day, right before having an interview with Ramsden Lawyers. And immediately they offered me a position. And
Because they could spot a gun from a mile away, clearly.
I remember doing the interview with John, and I was just so scared of John.
He's a pretty imposing guy, isn't he?
Yes.
Like very. He's got a very strong presence.
got a presence, yeah.
So strong,
Yes.
strong presence
And
about
every
him.
now and then he will laugh about how at Christmas party I go, Mr. Ramsden, I would like to thank you for offering me this job. Every now and then he'll drop that on me.
Dane used to call me Mr. Turner. If you
Yes, I
remember.
heard on the
Yes.
last episode.
It's all right. It's everyone's rite of passage. When are you going to call me Mr. Turner?
I'm never going to call you
Thank
Mr.
you.
Turner.
Good answer.
So they offered me a job, and then I remember that they actually started introducing me to the property team right after my interview as well.
Wow.
And I decided to go ahead with Ramsden Lawyers, and I cancelled my 3rd interview that I was meant to have in 2 days later.
Yeah.
Why is it like
Future
what?
was paved.
Yeah, what was it about like that interview you had with Ramsden? Like, what did it provide to you, and why did you then choose Ramsden out of those sort of 3 options that you broadly had?
It gave me a really positive vibe, and it wasn't like a temporary position or anything like that, to cover someone on maternity leave, and partly also because I know that Sham was from Malaysia. I'm like, oh, maybe he'll look after me, and guess what? He is looking after me.
Yes.
There you go.
Like I always tell Sham, no, you wear like Batman and Robin. You're the Batman, I'm the Robin.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with being a Robin.
Yeah. And if anything goes a bit more complicated, I'm like, Sham.
Give me a little high five, ladies and gents.
I'm
There you
like-
go.
I'm like, Sham, need your help. So he'll step in.
That's really lovely that you have that sort of I was big brother kind of figure in there, that he's very supportive of you. I know he speaks very highly of you, as does John and the team, very high praises.
How much does your life change when you know that your workplace that you go and spend, you exchange your time for your employer's money? If it's bad, your whole life is a fucking chaos. But when your workplace is good and you're wanted and respected and loved and you get rewarded and you feel challenged and you're living your best life, your whole life is completely different.
Exactly. At my old firm, I only worked there for 1.5 years, and I'm like, how did I work there for 1.5 years? It felt so long. And I've already been at Ramsden for almost now coming in another 2 months or so, 3.5 years.
And it's gone
it
so
just
quickly.
Went so quickly.
We have a lot of the team say that as well, don't we? Like, they're like, oh, yeah, it feels like I've been here. I know Dane said that. He was like, oh, it feels like I've been here for like 20 years.
He feels like he's part of the furniture because
Yeah.
he has been kept on the go since he arrived at Axon. And I think that's one of the things, like being kept busy and motivated and driven. I suppose that's what I've probably witnessed with you at Ramsden is you've kind of gone from like strength to strength to strength, and that's just while you've been looking after Axon stuff as well.
Well, talking about looking after Axon, like go back to that holiday. So a holiday framework. I remember very early on, you went on holidays to the Whitsundays.
My carefree days.
And you actually like got out your laptop while you're on a sailing boat in the middle of the Whitsundays.
I'm on a boat.
Yes, it was
because
actually...
you're so dedicated, but that just really shows your character, I think. Like, you really wanted to make sure that we were looked after, that we had, the best experience from you, and you've never let us down in that. And I think that's such a huge show of your character, that even on a boat in the Whitsundays.
Yes, and I remember there was like hardly any reception. So whenever there is a reception, I got an email, but I can't reply to it. I'm like, oh my God, I just can't go back to Whitsundays. Not unless Axon's having their holiday in Hawaii again. And then maybe I can have my holiday at Whitsundays when there's no reception.
Potentially. Well, no, you get to keep on working. It's fine. But that's that was one of the things. I think that was the real penny drop moment for you, though, wasn't it, Shea? Where you're like, hang on, I really am in control of this thing. Like, the buck stops with me, and you took on that real ownership at that point.
Because I was pretty much out of coverage at that point, because Axon has so many process, and not everyone knows the process top of their head. It's all saved in here.
Not like you.
Not like me. There was an intern at that time where she made a very big mistake, and I didn't even realize until when I came back and start going through my files, catch up with work, and I was like, hang on, what just happened on this file? And I realized that, oh, okay, I cannot leave Axon's file to another, paralegal or someone. Maybe I can pass it to Sham, but not someone.
Maybe I can trust my supervisor to help me out.
It is still my baby. It is still my baby. So until today, yes, I wouldn't let anyone touch the file. Not unless they're just doing something very basic, do the searches or something. But from the whole process, I still can't really let it go.
Well, I love it, mate, because it's ownership.
Yeah.
You're like, no, because when someone in that first meeting said, oh, this is going to be painful, and then you put your hand up and went, I'll have a crack. And then you've actually been able to experience what working with a group of individuals that has our background and culture and processes and systems and standards in place. Now you love it.
And we keep you busy.
Yes.
Yes.
And especially during the COVID time, if it wasn't for Axon, I think I'll be just sitting there doing archiving, doing admin work, really.
Yeah, because a lot of the property industry came to a massive grinding halt, not us. And, as you said during the last session there about, why it was a no-brainer for us to hire 7 people in a 6-month period, you guys have all listened to that podcast. If you haven't, go back to, I think, episode 6 of season 1. We accelerated through COVID, which means that we had to bring more people on board, but certainly that means you became, busier and busier and busier as well. To the point where overnight we got an amazing email from the wonderful Sean up in Townsville, who's now bought his second property with us, built the property through COVID. It just got handed over to the property manager, and it's now going to go on the market for way more from a rental perspective, and it's probably gone up by $100,000. And he personally reflected back. He's like, I remember those key decisions that we made during COVID. It was a bit tumultuous at the time, but we did it anyway, and hey presto. So, it's, I guess when you do have that courage, Tammy, as you quite rightly pointed out during the last podcast, that, fortune favours the bold and all that stuff. So, yeah, it was good. We were glad that you were on board and you were, being gainfully employed as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. And
So where have we gone from there? I suppose you said that you've handled everything from Axon pretty much exclusively. So from last count, that's like over...
From the very first, I think it's about 225 files.
Around about 225.
Approximately.
It was 224 yesterday. It's 225 today. So 225 files, and obviously your efforts have also been recognised inside Ramsden as well.
Most definitely. I have actually been promoted to become an associate around July, August last year.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
I remember when John gave me a little heads up, I was like, what? My hand's shaking, John. Before when it's actually all official.
Yep.
He gave me a little hint and I was like, no, John.
Yeah. Good on
Can't
you.
believe it. But,
And
you know,
we've personally shared back with the team some of the amazing feedback we've got from our surveys and things that we put out to our clients. And I know that we've had some amazing feedback, and I've absolutely loved being able to share that with John and the team. Just sharing how much our clients really love you, and you're making a difference in their lives. You know, the trust and the just the reliability. They've always felt that they've been supported, and it's really lovely that we were able to share with John and with the team how much our clients really love what you do.
What did he do with that feedback? Do you remember?
I do. Do you know?
yeah, I was actually having a bad day and I was like, oh.
You only have one
No, I had
per month.
I can't tell.
Okay.
But Tammy sent through that email, and to be honest, I was actually like tearing. I'm like, oh, this is why I'm doing my job. You know, there are some clients that actually, you know, pretty much all the Axon clients appreciate what I do,
course they
which definitely lift me up.
Yeah, I was going to
But-
say, which one doesn't?
Yeah, which
you tell
one?
us which one doesn't.
And then he'll be sacked, like he or she.
No, so I remember that day, I was having a rough day, and Tamara's email came through, and I was just like, oh. Then I started tearing at my desk.
I heard a bit of a rumour then some of that feedback was given around to the rest of the office and something like, just be like Shea. If everyone can be like Shea, then...
That
We
was
need a meme like that.
that was actually the shout out from the Wednesday Fix
Oh, the
Q&A
little live Q&A? Yep.
And John didn't know about it, and I think it was at least good 3-4 weeks later. Somehow the office manager found out about it and asked me for the link. So I just thought, yeah, I'll share it with you. And she obviously showed John, and John sent an all user email through the firm. And
How many people in Ramsden in total?
oh, I can't tell you, many.
A lot. A lot, yeah.
You've run out of fingers to count.
I'm always just in my little office just working away, so I don't really, don't really count.
Yeah.
And, you know, John sent a really long email and, you know, specifically to whichever time of that video.
Yep.
And I remember that lunch break, I was like, oh, let me just stay in here and not just grab water. Because not that I was embarrassed, but I was just like, shy. Like,
No, it's amazing. Like the managing partner's now going, hey, listen to this 45-second bit of feedback from one of, it's like, you
Biggest
know,
client.
the biggest client, Axon, and the whole rest of the defence community. And we were just telling it how it is, like we always do. And he just happened to get wind of it, and he wanted the whole rest of the crew to go, just be like Shea.
just be like Shea. Billables, be like Shea. Hard work, be like Shea.
I love that.
that's awesome.
I love, you know, it does make you feel good when you get good feedback and good support and good, you know, recognition. And I'm all for that in our business. I know that we send out these surveys to clients, and sometimes, you know, it can be a bit of a pain in the ass to fill in a survey, but that feedback goes a long way. So if any of our clients are listening and you've got a survey that you haven't filled out, we'd love your responses, because it does, you know, good and bad. I'm all for the constructive feedback as well.
Yep.
But that's what makes us better, you know.
Absolutely. Feedback's a breakfast of champions.
Indeed.
We obviously know that our clients love you, Shea. Like, why do you love our clients then? Like, what is it about our clients that you like?
So Axon clients come to us with significant level of knowledge, and it makes the whole communication a lot easier and more fluent, because they understand the terms that we're using. They already understand the process, and that all goes, you know, the credit all goes to Axon coaches, Robbie, Dan, and Dane, for coaching them the process. So that cuts that part where we have, you know, explain
You're not
to them
starting from the ground up.
Yeah, so then we just go straight into, you know, contract summary. If you're happy, sign it.
Yeah. Because you wouldn't get that with mum and dad people, right?
No.
When mum and dads are like, hey, I'm going to go and buy a house, like, sure, they've been living in a house for 30 years, but that doesn't make them an expert on being able to buy a house anymore.
Even just the terms like unconditional or settlement or what does, like, people would be like, what does that mean?
All right, let's put Shea on the spot.
Ooh.
Shay, what does unconditional mean? We've spoken about it a little bit, so it's a bit of a technical term. So I suppose, Shay, if you can put it forward as...
I guess the easiest way to look at it is point of no return, like Robbie mentioned. Because once you go unconditional, if you decided that you change your mind or if your circumstances change, you can't get out from the contract. You're literally locked into the contract and will have to move forward to settlement.
And that goes both ways, I guess, as well. They can't pull out either. Like a seller wouldn't be able to...
The seller wouldn't,
be able to pull out either.
The seller wouldn't be able to. Well, I guess for the buyer perspective, depending... If it's not registered yet and, say, the sunset clause, meaning the seller is meant to register this land by a certain date and the seller didn't manage to, then the buyer has the opportunity to terminate.
Right.
But you have to wait, on average, for a land about 15 to 18 months from the contract date.
Wow.
And I mean, that's very relevant at the moment because some of the land registration timelines that we are seeing are blowing out like over 12 to 15 months
the
now.
demand is crazy.
So that's after going unconditional, unless it goes past the sunset date, really the buyer is locked into the contract and needs to settle regardless whether the circumstances change and won't be able to proceed to settlement. And this is why debt comes into the picture again, and this is why debt I guess from what I see, she doesn't try to apply for mortgage until when it's closer to registration. So number one, the mortgage document's not going to lapse for them to reapply. And then we don't go unconditional as well until closer to registration date.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things in the majority of cases, the banks can't go out there and do their valuation as part of their mortgage assessment until there's pegs in the ground, and those pegs are not in the ground until about 6 weeks before the block is about to register. So there's a little bit of synchronicity that needs to go on there.
And that goes back to, again, those relationships. Like, if you didn't have that relationship, that would be a huge shit fight.
Now, we're talking specifically about Queensland law here, and as you're very well aware that the property law across Australia is not synchronised between Queensland and New South Wales and Victoria or SA. So, as Dan, you and I talk about during our education and coaching sessions, when you buy a property up here in Queensland, you are fully protected by a finance clause all the way up into a point where you are satisfied and you either proceed, step over that line of no return, go unconditional, or you pull out. Up to you. But either way, you're not going to get sued, and you're going to get your sort of deposit back. Down in New South Wales, you go ahead and explain that, though. It's different from a layman's terms perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much if you're going down to New South Wales and you go ahead to exchange your contract, so you as the buyer sign your contracts, and then the seller would unlikely sign their kind of side of the contracts until you've willing to put your deposit in the game. And that is at the point in time where you waive your finance clause.
And that's a 10% cash deposit, non-refundable.
And if you can't get finance when the land registers 6 or 12 months down the track, you can kiss goodbye to that 10% deposit. And as Shea alluded to earlier, like, the seller is well within their rights to go ahead and start chasing after you for damages as well.
That comes down to, like, different risk and different plans. People, where you decide on where you're going to invest or buy, that comes down to the overall plan. What's your risk strategy? What's your personal situation that you can take on that risk?
Yeah. We have had loads of clients that either come from New South Wales or come from Victoria, and they come like, hey, we want to buy a property. We're like, well, as you know from our training, you can buy in Victoria, New South Wales or Queensland. That's the three, and the little micro markets in those areas, we can now have that conversation. They're like, I'm from sort of, Melbourne. I'm really looking forward to buying a property in Melbourne. Like, no dramas. Let's do that then. Let me just give you a layman's terms understanding of what the rules of the road are down there when you buy a property in Melbourne. They're like, oh, that seems a bit risky. I said, as opposed to buying a property in Queensland, put $1,000 down, fully protected by a finance clause, et cetera, et cetera. They're like, yeah, even though I'm from Melbourne, I don't want to undertake that level of risk. Let's go buy a property in Queensland.
That's a typical one too, because, and I love all you Victorians out there, if you're from Melbourne, I can almost guarantee you the number one place that you're going to want to go and buy an investment property is Melbourne. 100%. I don't know what it is about you Victorians, but
And
it's
that's
what you
not
do.
saying we only push people into Queensland, like that's our driving nature, whatever. It definitely comes down to risk and the plan, and for people that have a few investment properties under their belt, their risk is a lot lower, right?
Well, their tolerance to risk is much higher because they've got the buoyancy in their portfolio to do so.
Correct.
I just want to be crystal clear on something. We're never providing legal advice or tax advice or financial advice. We're literally saying, hey, as people that work in the industry every day, this is the generic rules of the road. It's our obligation to let you know what they are. Go speak to the solicitor about it so you know from a legal sense the advice you're actually getting there. From a macro strategy perspective, which way would you like to go?
And that's absolutely why we rely on our professional partners, like Shea, our conveyancing solicitor, like Jace, our accountant, financial planner, like Deb, the mortgage broker. These are the people we're relying on because that's their speciality.
Yeah. So it's a really it's a wonderful part of being in the business and sort of developing that strategy and getting to the point where they put that expression of interest in. They're communicating with you and getting the summaries of the contracts and using DocuSign, et cetera, et cetera. So
hasn't that come a long way?
Yes, that was certainly something that COVID helped us a lot out with.
And settling via PEXA as well.
Yeah.
And thanks to hate to say it, but thanks to COVID, that it pushes everyone through to the next electronic phase, DocuSign and PEXA.
And it was gradually coming, but I tell you what, there were some of those developers over there that were really dragging their feet going, this doesn't appear on my desk for me to get my fancy Mont Blanc fountain pen out and look like a banker while I'm signing. Because all they do now is they click a button and no one knows that they've signed like those 150 pages.
Wasn't it funny? Early on, we'd been pushing like the digital signing for quite a while, and there was a few, as you said, dragging the feet. And then suddenly it's like it got done and they're like, well, that was bloody quick. That didn't take 2 weeks to come in the mail.
That was one of the builders and developers down in Melbourne. I was like, mate, send it out on Friday. It's going to be back by Monday. They're like, but the client lives in Perth. I'm like, there's this fucking thing called the internet. If you upload it to DocuSign, they'll get it via email. They'll click a few buttons and return it, and it'll be on your desk by Monday.
And the way technology works, that is all.
This is last year, by the way, not fucking 1950.
It's like 2020 called, we'd like our internet back, please.
But there's so much security and so much technology behind it that they can see where it was signed, what it was like. All
total, it's full tracking. They know exactly who's bloody opening it. So
and the bank wants to see that as well as part of the requirement for the finance.
Yeah, it needs to be fully disclosed. It was I think it was just one of those teething issues where when a new piece of technology comes into play, people are very standoffish until they actually understand it. And humans are really opposed to change.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, we're going to change this thing. And they're like, the immediate response is no. You immediately push back on it. So it's just a matter of having one of those huge shocks to the entire environment, like
one of those
COVID.
things that COVID was. We were a winner from COVID.
It was funny, poor old Deb had to fight with it all the time. Like, no, I've got to do face-to-face appointments and I've got to go via snail mail and doing this. And then COVID hit.
She was going to the airports and meeting with people.
We spoke about that last week. And then the banks weren't making any money. They're like, because it's like, no, it's not part of our policy. We can't do that. Like, privacy. How do we know it's not the right client? Find a way around it.
And even
then they're not making any money. Oh, you can use the technology. If we need to fucking meet our targets and write the loans, don't worry about the policy. The policy's fine. Just fucking get the money rolling in. Oh, mate, we were just fucking shaking our heads Dan, where we were like, what, you bunch of fucking hypocrites. Now you can't get the fucking money in the door. You're like, I don't care about the policy anymore. Just fucking find a way to bring me the money. Show me the money.
There was a lot of F-bombs in there. What were you saying?
It's just like a lot of banks these days now issue the mortgage docs 90% DocuSign as well. And then only the actual mortgage document that needs to be printed out, witnessed and signed. And that just cut all the errors. Because before COVID, I think most of it was still paper-based. So they have strict instructions. All these have to be double-sided except for this. Mortgage documents needs to be single-sided. And a lot of time we see it, when the client sign it, return to the bank, they're either single-sided or the mortgage doc's double-sided, and it's just too hard.
Or they've missed a signature, they've missed one piece.
When DocuSign, there's no room for error. You just sign it,
you proceed.
Done. And then really comes down to the actual mortgage document.
Absolutely. Mate, what an absolute ripper session I think we've had today.
Yes.
Like, How are you feeling now, Shay? We're like,
Did you have fun?
I reckon you can sit here for another half an hour and just keep talking.
I'm fine now.
Yeah.
I'm not as nervous.
The vodka sunk in.
Yeah, as soon as
No
we got
vodka.
stuck into talking about like your technical expertise, you could just see your face lit up and your eyes became alert, and you're like, I know all of this stuff.
course
This
you
is
do.
right in my
We're
wheelhouse.
not sending you down the garden
See,
path.
I'm not a public. I can't do even though if I have to do a speech in front of people I know, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I just.
Well, you've just done absolutely amazing. So well done.
Thank you.
Thanks
having
very much
me.
for joining us, mate, and giving, I suppose, our listeners the opportunity to get a little bit of a glimpse inside your world when you start talking about all those little technical elements that you're doing on our clients' behalf, as part of that high level of trust that they certainly put into you as well, mate. So thank you very much for all you do for our clients.
Thanks for joining us, ladies and gents. Thank you again, Shay. Have a great morning, everyone. See you later.
See ya. Bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning into today's podcast. If you enjoyed listening, make sure you give us a 5-star rating, hit subscribe so you'll be first in line to get it in your inbox every week on a Tuesday. Whilst you're at it, open up your favourite social media app, be that Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube, and connect with Axon Property Group. This is where you'll see us every day sharing the secrets of creating multi-million-dollar property portfolios and performing to the highest levels of your life. You'll get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to what it really takes to build a life that you love. You'll also discover how to secure your financial future as an ADF member or veteran, and I assure you your future self will love you for it. Thanks again for listening, and